Amerikan sinemasının dev ödüllü ismi Steven Spielberg'in yapımcılığını, gişede iyi başarı yapmış filmleriyle bilinen Jon Favreau'nun yönetmenliğini yaptığı ve başrollerini Daniel Craig, Harrison Ford ve Olivia Wilde'ın paylaştığı Cowboys and Aliens'ın kamera arkasını hazırladık bu hafta. Klasik western'in uzaylı istilasıyla birleştiği filmin çekimleri Amerika'nın New Mexico ve Kaliforniya eyaletinde gerçekleşti. Birebir çizgi romandan uyarlanan film, görsel efektlerinde bir hayli başarılı. Filmde bilim kurgu var, western var, oyuncular da iyi. Bu saatten sonra Hollywood'un eski klasik western filmlerini çekeceği de yok. Biz de kovboy şapkası takmış Harrison Ford'un atının üstünde uzaylıları kovaladığını izleyelim. Şimdi Cowboys ve Aliens kamera arkası.
This is really our introduction to the town proper. Not only the characters, it's the first time we're actually seeing the main drag of the town. It's very early on in the film. We get right into the middle of this fight that has spilled out into the street. I'll just say that, and then we can read through it.
Word is, Apaches took Doubtful Canyon and Grant Station last week, snatching people right out of their beds.
The genesis of the project was there was a comic done by Platinum Studios that caught our eye for its title. And I think in a world where studios are very frequently looking for big titles, there are not a lot that really stand out. And this was one that really stood out to us, but it stood out to us not just because it was a catchy title, but the promise of genre blending in a very unique way that people had never seen before.
The thing that I kept wondering was, why hadn't anybody done anything like this before?
The idea of cowboys and aliens coexisting in the same universe was really provocative. It causes you to react in an extreme way, and anything that causes you to react in an extreme way, I think, is ultimately pretty compelling.
I've always felt like the Western could be tweaked for this sort of blending of genres.
Rehearsal and action. The cowboy logic of it is that this is between us.
I think the key for movies like this, especially movies that are based on comic books, is to take what's real about the comic and make it feel real on screen without sacrificing the kind of larger-than-life quality of a comic.
No one's ever done anything like taking the Old West and having aliens land and invade at that time. I don't know why no one's ever done it. For me, I've been doing it in my head since I was a kid. I always loved playing a different version of cowboys and Indians. Instead of guns, it'd be like little sci-fi guns.
It becomes about doing something familiar, but make it fresh by the way you combine these things.
I'm sure it's been played out millions of times in little kids' bedrooms with their own toys, and we brought it to the screen.
A lot of people have come to believe that visitors from outer space had something to do with the building of the pyramids. And so it just seemed that if ancient Egyptians had had an interaction, why couldn't pioneers of the West?
Sure, this could have happened, and it would have been wild.
Where's our gold, Jake?
Our movie hit the West with all of its tension.
In the West, people looked at each other sideways, and there was racism and there was hardship.
The best Westerns acknowledge, all of it. Deceit and crime, all of those frontier aspects that really existed and created a lot of drama and a lot of tension.
All of these people, whether it's the Cowboys, the Apaches, the Chiricahua, in the Old West, if you look at that situation, it was a very uncomfortable time to live. It certainly wasn't safe or easy.
Well, I'm gonna need you to come with us. Wouldn't do that if I was you.
Everybody okay? Everyone good?
There's this great palette of characters to draw from and imagery, but it's made a little bit fresher by the fact that you are now creating an effects show around the backdrop of a Western.
When you hear a title like Cowboys and Aliens, you may think something very pulpy, and there is a certain fun and pulp associated with it, but when you see the tone that Jon Favreau brings to it, you see that you can really imagine it happening.
I think the thing that I really respect that Alex and Bob and the writers and Jon Favreau did with this concept and was keeping it authentic. And they can get all real from the standpoint of the characters.
When you look away from him or you look away from each other in that last beat, it makes you have to sort of start again. So I'd love for the last line he says, I don't want to do that again, to make you both look at each other, kind of laugh, and let the laugh turn into a still moment and turn into... Got it.
It was so important for all of the filmmakers that we wanted to make, first and foremost, a good Western.
What's happened to the Western is it's gotten absorbed into other genres. You know, if you think about Star Wars, what they did in a very clever way was borrow the iconography of the West and then update it with science fiction.
It was the opportunity to take advantage of the humanity of the Western and then to fold into it a sense of contemporary interests. Sort of a genius concept.
They're coming back!
If the aliens never came down in this story, there's a tremendous story of conflicted characters and a kind of range war that starts to bubble up to the surface at the very first act.
I need that weapon. It's the only thing that counts.
It's cool to see characters who would have been shooting at one another a few days before are suddenly forced to try to survive together.
As a movie, it makes perfect sense. It's a very imaginative, but somehow emotionally relatable story.
These are real people in this real situation. And the more you feel like you're part of this world, the more exciting and interesting it becomes when everything gets turned on its ear. Here we have an opportunity in Cowboys and Aliens to take what is mythically very satisfying and then update all of it by using all the cutting edge technology, and that's the fun part for me. The classic form of both the Alien movie and the Western, bring them together and create something new and exciting. As a director, that image was very compelling.
It would yield some really cool action.
Every day that something would be going on, there were lots of explosions because we had to sort of combine reality with the effects.
I like there's a progression in the action sequences. First time we encounter the aliens, it's nighttime in this old West town. You have all of our lead characters here, and then slowly on the horizon the lights come. And then before they know it, they're upon them, blowing things up, snatching people.
The 18th, 19th century mind has no idea what they're looking at. And in come, on these cables that we had rigged at 60, 70 miles an hour, these giant lights on a rig from the Spider Cam crew. Then explosions with these laser beams. We're setting practical explosions, blowing the hell out of this town because we've been able to rig it for some time, built buildings that were there specifically just to explode. So everybody came together in a practical way rather than relying on computer graphics to create this first town attack.
This was a first-time venture for me in terms of definitely the biggest stunt I've done. And we get harnessed up in this thing, and they have this huge crane. Sometimes a guy will literally like jump off a building and his weight will yank you up, 20 feet into the air. It was crazy. I mean, I was running around a town that was exploding with Harrison Ford, and all of a sudden I get yanked, and I'm looking at Harrison as I get yanked up in the air, and it was wild.
Whenever you're planning a film like this, you don't know who your cast is going to be. You have to assume that the actors won't be able to ride. So we planned it that way, and we budgeted, and we intended and always had stunt doubles available for these actors on any and all of these sequences because we just didn't know how well these actors would ride. In the end, these stunt people did not do as much as we thought they would because these folks did so well.
I've owned horses for 25, 30 years, and not that I ride them all the time, but I'm comfortable around horses, and that wasn't a huge challenge. I had a good horse. That's the challenge, is finding a mount that works with you. There weren't any particular physical challenges in this part. I was playing the old guy. I think Daniel had a lot more to do in that area than I did.
I try and sort of let everybody else do the talking and I'll do the action. And I'd ridden horses in movies before, but never ridden Western, which had always been an ambition of mine. They put together a team of people who worked on many Westerns, and their experience was just sort of invaluable.
We did stuff on this movie that has never been done. Well, originally we weren't going to do it with the real actors. There was a new design and the way we rigged it. It wasn't a normal design. It was something new that we came up with that made it more progressive and easier on the person who was doing it. And the stunt guys were going, yeah, this is actually really cool. So then I started thinking, well, maybe we can do it with some of the more game actors. And I started talking with the actors saying, hey, it's pretty good. If you're not afraid of heights, I'll take you up slowly. And we just progressed into it. We'd use the fake horse, basically. It works well. It's a good replacement for a real horse. The ones we have now, they've got eyes that blink, they got ears that move.
That's the biscuit rig, which is a horse, a mechanical horse that actually articulates.
Olivia, yeah, she did her own stunt. When the aliens grab her off her horse, she's running full speed on her horse. She's hooked to a crane and she's lifted. That's Olivia. That's not a stunt girl.
She has a harness under her wardrobe. And when we get to a certain point, there's a 12-foot ratchet that is four-parted, so it has a lot of stroke to it, so we can actually pull her about 80 feet in the air. is always the nervous time, just before you do it. Actor on a wire. Okay, Sean, here we go.
That was really fun because although I'm an experienced horsewoman and I've been on horses since I was a kid, being yanked off a horse and pulled into the air was a new experience.
Olivia Wilde. This acting thing doesn't work out, you come work for me?
Absolutely.
All right, good.
This is the fun stuff.
I had intended to do a simple pull, and then I had lunch, and earlier Olivia Wilde had done her pull, and she came in the trailer with me and Sam and Julio and a couple other actors, and she was talking about how great her pull was. She did it, and she got pulled like 20 feet in the air, and all these guys are looking at me because I'm doing my pull after lunch. So I went up to Tommy, and I was like, Tommy, I don't care what you have to do, but it's got to be better than Olivia's, and it's got to be better by 100%. She gets pulled up from here, and it just goes up off the horse. I, in my infinite wisdom, have allowed them to do a gooch.
What a gooch wrap is you take a line, and you have a harness on, and you take the line and you hook it on your shoulder in the back, and you run it down and you run it underneath your crotch, and you run it straight up. So when you pull on it, it flips your feet up over your head. There's nothing you can do about it, you're along for the ride. He came ripping backflip out of there and went up about 60 feet. When he got down on the ground, he gave me a big hug and he said, "That's the coolest thing I've ever done in my life."
That was ridiculously fun. I could have flown home at that point. I was so fired up.
It all comes into clear focus in a big daylight battle above ground with cowboys and Indians together on horseback with spears, with guns, with bows and arrows fighting these aliens.
We're 300-400 people on any one of these locations, 40, 50 stunts, 60 stunts on any given day. It was a massive undertaking and they did a wonderful job.
We've all really jumped into the physicality of it.
The whole thing sort of is quite organic and happens on the day, really. So the cowboy kind of just comes.
Working with the horses and shooting guns and hanging out with guys, it was kind of a perfect experience.